What if I told you that one woman's love affair changed the fate of an entire empire? That a German princess became the most powerful ruler in Russian history through seduction, betrayal, and sheer force of will. Before you discover how Catherine the Great conquered not just thrones, but the hearts of countless lovers and millions of subjects, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because this story of power, passion, and political genius will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about female leadership in history. In the frozen winter of 1744, a 14-year-old German princess named Sophie Friederich August stepped off a carriage in Moscow, shivering not just from the bitter cold, but from the terrifying realization that her entire life had just been decided by others. She was about to marry the future emperor of Russia, a man she had never met, in a country whose language she couldn't speak. But this wasn't just any arranged marriage. This was a calculated political move that would either make her the most powerful woman in Europe or destroy her completely. Sophie's mother had dragged her across Europe for one reason: to secure an alliance between Prussia and Russia through marriage. The young princess was nothing more than a pawn in the grand chess game of 18th century politics. But what her mother did not know, what no one could have predicted, was that this teenage girl possessed an intellect so sharp and an ambition so fierce that she would soon be playing chess with the fate of nations. When Sophie first laid eyes on her future husband, Grand Duke Peter, her heart didn't flutter with romance. It sank with dread. Peter was pale, sickly, and obsessed with toy soldiers, while other teenagers dreamed of love. Peter spent his nights playing with miniature armies and talking endlessly about his hero, Frederick the Great of Prussia, Russia's greatest enemy. But Sophie was no ordinary teenager. Even as a child, she had devoured the works of Voltaire and other Enlightenment philosophers. She understood that knowledge was power, and power was survival. So while Peter played with toys, Sophie began the most important seduction of her life. Not of a man, but of an entire nation. She threw herself into learning Russian with such dedication that she would sneak out of bed at night to practice by candlelight until she collapsed from exhaustion. When she nearly died from pneumonia, the Russian people were moved by her determination to become one of them. When she converted from Protestantism to Russian Orthodoxy, taking the name Catherine, she wasn't just changing her religion. She was rewriting her very identity. The wedding in 1745 was magnificent, but the marriage was a disaster from day one. Peter was more interested in his toy soldiers than his beautiful young wife. Worse, he made no secret of his disdain for Russia and his worship of Prussia. While Peter alienated everyone around him, Catherine was busy charming nobles, learning about Russian culture, and building the network of allies that would eventually make her the most powerful person in the empire. For 17 agonizing years, Catherine played the role of the dutiful wife while secretly preparing for something far more ambitious. She had lovers. Oh, did she have lovers? But these weren't just romantic flings. Every relationship Catherine entered was strategic. Her affair with Sergei Saltykov produced a son, securing her position as mother to the future heir. Her passionate relationship with Gregory Orlov gave her the military support she would desperately need. But it was her intellectual affair with the ideas of the Enlightenment that truly set her apart. While European kings ruled through fear and divine right, Catherine began to envision a different kind of power. One based on reason, progress, and the consent of the governed. The moment that changed everything came in 1762. Emperor Elizabeth died, and Peter ascended to the throne as Peter III. Within months, he had managed to offend every important group in Russian society. He ended Russia's war with Prussia, just as they were winning. He threatened to disband the Orthodox Church, and he openly planned to divorce Catherine and marry his mistress. Peter had given Catherine the perfect opportunity, and she seized it with breathtaking audacity. On June 28, 1762, while Peter was away at his summer palace, Catherine struck. Dressed in a military uniform, she rode through St. Petersburg, rallying support. The sight was electrifying. Here was a woman who looked like an empress, spoke like a Russian, and promised to restore Russia's honor. The coup was swift and decisive. Within hours, Catherine had secured the loyalty of the military, the church, and the nobility. Peter, faced with universal opposition, abdicated without firing a shot. Days later, he was dead under mysterious circumstances. At 33, the German princess had become Catherine II, Empress of all Russia. But seizing power was only the beginning. Now Catherine had to prove she deserved it. And prove it she did, in ways that would echo through history for centuries. Catherine didn't just rule Russia, she transformed it into a European superpower. Under her reign, Russia expanded by 200,000 square miles, adding Crimea and territories along the Black Sea. She crushed rebellions, defeated the Ottoman Empire multiple times, and made Russia a force that all of Europe had to respect. But Catherine's greatest conquest wasn't territorial, it was intellectual and cultural. She corresponded with Voltaire and other Enlightenment thinkers, turning St. Petersburg into a center of learning and arts. She founded the Hermitage, built magnificent palaces, and created a legal code that was centuries ahead of its time in protecting certain rights of citizens. Yet perhaps the most fascinating aspect of Catherine's reign was how she balanced power with passion. She had at least 12 major romantic relationships, and each one became part of the political fabric of her rule. Her longest relationship was with Gregory Potemkin, a brilliant military commander who helped her conquer the South and may have even secretly married her. Critics called her immoral, but Catherine understood something her male counterparts often missed: that emotional intelligence and the ability to inspire loyalty through personal connection were just as important as military might. Her lovers weren't weaknesses. They were instruments of statecraft, chosen for their abilities to help her govern effectively. The woman who had once been a powerless teenage pawn had become the master of the game. She ruled for 34 years, longer than almost any other Russian leader. When she died in 1796, Russia had been transformed from a backward kingdom into one of the great powers of the world. But Catherine's most enduring conquest was the heart of history itself. In an age when women were expected to be silent and submissive, she proved that female leadership could be not just effective, but transformative. She showed that power wasn't about being the strongest person in the room. It was about being the smartest, the most prepared, and the most willing to adapt and grow. The teenage girl who had arrived in Russia, speaking no Russian and knowing nothing about the country, had become Catherine the Great. Not just because she conquered territories, but because she conquered the impossible task of being a woman in power and making it look natural. Catherine's story challenges everything we think we know about leadership, about power, and about what it means to leave a lasting legacy. She proved that sometimes the most unlikely people, a foreign teenage girl with no obvious qualifications for ruling an empire, can rise to greatness through sheer determination, intellectual curiosity, and the courage to seize opportunities when they arise. Her reign reminds us that true power doesn't come from birthright or brute force, but from the ability to understand people, to adapt to circumstances, and to never stop learning and growing. In a world that told her she couldn't succeed, Catherine didn't just succeed. She redefined what success looked like. So the next time someone tells you that you're not qualified, that you don't belong, or that you're too different to succeed, remember the German princess who became the greatest ruler in Russian history. Remember that sometimes being an outsider isn't a weakness. It's exactly what gives you the perspective to change everything. If this incredible story of ambition, intelligence, and the courage to rewrite your own destiny inspired you, make sure to subscribe for more untold stories of remarkable people who changed the world. Hit that notification bell so you never miss these deep dives into the lives that shaped history. What do you think was Catherine's greatest achievement? Her military conquests, her cultural reforms, or simply proving that a woman could rule as effectively as any man? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video where we explore another fascinating figure who defied all expectations. Tell us which country or city you're watching from. See you in the next video.